Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 345. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today, I'm going to talk about why we could all benefit from saying yes more often. And this podcast topic is inspired by something that happened to me last week. But actually, there have been a couple of times in the last year where I was presented with opportunities that I hesitated to say yes to at first. But in the end, I went for it and I had a really fantastic experience. So, what are you going to learn in this episode? I'm going to talk about why it's so important to say yes to unexpected opportunities, why saying yes to one thing can lead to other doors opening for you, how to know if it's the right thing for you to say yes to, how to get over your fears and just say yes to opportunities if they're right for you, and how to open yourself up to new opportunities in the future. So this is actually my second time recording this podcast episode. I did it last week. Saved it, I thought, and apparently only 3 minutes of the episode were saved rather than the full half hour. So, take two. So this episode, as I explained, was inspired by something that happened last week. On Tuesday afternoon at about 3:30 in the afternoon, I received a call from ITV asking me if I could be in Liverpool the following day to go live on This Morning. Now, Liverpool is about 4 hours from where I live, so it was quite a journey, and they needed me there at 9:45 in the morning, so that meant that I couldn't go up the following morning. I had to leave that same afternoon. And to be honest, I hesitated because it would mean dropping everything, canceling some things in my calendar, pushing others to Thursday and Friday, and there was one call I had on Wednesday afternoon that I had to reschedule completely, and when I went into the person's calendar, they didn't have times until April. So that meant really delaying a podcast opportunity for a show that I was going to be a guest on, that I was really looking forward to. But priorities, and that was something that I could rearrange, whereas this opportunity I could not. So I said yes, and 3 hours later, I was on a train to Liverpool. It was very last minute. I got up there at 10:30 at night. Went straight to my hotel, went straight to bed, woke up the next morning, had breakfast, went to location, and did the thing. So I'm someone, probably because of my autism, Asperger's, I'm the kind of person who's not really good with last-minute changes. I'm not good with surprises. I really like things to be planned in advance. I don't like last-minute things, so I think that's why this is particularly difficult for me, but I don't think I'm the only person who struggles to say yes to spontaneous things. I'm just not naturally spontaneous. So why do I think it's so important to say yes to unexpected opportunities and spontaneous opportunities? Well, first of all, it takes you outside of your comfort zone. It stretches you. So I think every time I say yes to something spontaneous like this, it stretches me outside my comfort zone and it helps me be more spontaneous in the future. Now, I don't necessarily want to be like constantly spontaneous, but I do want to be more flexible and I do want to be able to say yes to opportunities when they arrive like this. So a lot of times, I think on television, stuff is last minute. I was talking to the producer who was there, and she had also come up from London and was going back the same day as I was. And I said, "Oh, I hope you had more advance notice on this than I did." And she said, "No, you know what? Not really." So that leads me to believe that possibly if I get, asked to come back on in the future, it might also be last minute. And this is an opportunity that I want to say yes to. So I would like to condition myself to be more open to spontaneous opportunities, personally. So maybe think about you. Like, how important is it for you to be spontaneous? I think that, even if we don't choose to say yes to all of the spontaneous opportunities that come our way, at least we can be open to them. And at least we can consider them. Because honestly, my knee-jerk reaction was, no, I can't be in Liverpool tomorrow. That's ridiculous. But it wasn't. It was doable and it happened. And I was actually gone from home from less than 24 hours. I was back by, I think, 3:30 or 4:30 the following afternoon. So it was fast, it was unexpected, and it was a great experience. So I'm really glad that I didn't say no to it. So again, saying yes to spontaneous, unexpected opportunities can take us outside of our comfort zone. And I think that's a really good thing because when we stretch our comfort zone in one way, somehow it magically stretches in other ways. It's like it makes it easier to do other things that were previously outside of our comfort zone. It's like our comfort zone is stretched in all different areas or all different directions. It's kind of hard to explain, but that's something that I've experienced. And I'm sure if you think about it, you might have experienced that as well. So also saying yes to spontaneous, unexpected opportunities can help us to learn new things. I'm clearly not used to going on television. I did it once live in the studio. I did it once recorded on location. And this was the first time I did it live on location. So it was really good to have that experience, to see what that's like, so that I'm more comfortable doing it in the future. Because again, I would like more opportunities like this. So saying yes to spontaneous things can help us to learn new things because quite possibly we're having new experiences. And when you say yes to something spontaneous and unexpected, you never know where this new path will lead. It might lead you down new paths that you didn't even know existed. Because I firmly believe that when we say yes to one opportunity, that leads to more doors opening. Whereas when you say no, you close this door and potentially other doors. So when I was first invited on ITV This Morning last year, I also hesitated to say yes to it. I was scared. I had never done that before. And I was really feeling vulnerable about talking to trees on live television because I knew there would be backlash from it because not everyone believes this stuff. It's weird stuff. So, and there was, there were lots of comments on social media saying that I was crazy, that I needed to be locked up. Not only last time, but also this time. Interestingly, I have a friend who was kind enough to kind of scope out the comments on social media for me so that I didn't have to go in there and see it myself. And she kind of checked it out to see if there was anything that I needed to respond to or that I needed to know about. And there were fewer crazy lady comments this time. So I think that's really interesting. And that made me really glad to have gone on that show twice now and do my weird thing. Because I think the more that I talk about this, the more it will maybe not become normalized, but become less of a weird thing or be perceived as less of a weird thing. So I'm getting off on a tangent there. If I had said no to that first opportunity last year, which I was tempted to, if I'd said no to that, I wouldn't have been called back last year to do a promotional thing for them in the woods. I wouldn't have been called back this year to talk to the tree that was a candidate for the European Tree of the Year. Those two doors would have been closed, and who knows what other doors will open in the future because of that. Do you know what else would have been closed? Because of that first appearance, I was asked on BBC Radio Scotland, I was asked on Talk Radio in Ireland. Those opportunities would not have been there if those people hadn't seen me on television. So at least 4 new doors open because of saying yes to that one door. And again, when you say yes to a spontaneous, unexpected opportunity, you don't know what other doors are going to open as a result of that. Maybe one, maybe none, maybe a handful, maybe more. But it's like you're putting out that energy that you are ready, willing, and able to do things that are outside of your comfort zone, that you're willing to say yes to opportunities. And I don't know, I think it sends out the right energy and the right message to the universe. And I know that's getting, a bit woo, but I think it is. I think it works in that way in addition to working in practical ways. Saying yes opens you up to new opportunities. New opportunities for growth, Because again, this stretches us, it helps us learn new things, and it helps us to grow. So how do you know if it's the right thing for you to say yes to, because obviously not every opportunity is going to be the right thing for you. I think that a clear no, will feel clear and obvious. So if you're waffling back and forth and you're thinking, oh, maybe I should do it, I kind of want to do it, I kind of don't want to do it, I think that's a maybe, which could turn into a yes. I really think that a no is a clear, like, tight, constrictive, like, this is not right for me. But sometimes a no can be confused with a fearful, like you're afraid of the opportunity. So I think it's really important to identify if you're trying to decide what to do, whether it's fear or whether it's a no. First of all, rule out fear, because if it's fear, then you can turn that into a yes. So a couple of years back, I was invited to do a webinar with an online business friend of mine. I don't know her that well, more like a business acquaintance. So she was doing these drunk business webinars. And yeah, I don't drink a lot, and I really can't remember the last time I got drunk. So it wasn't a natural yes to me. And I thought, oh God, I don't want to do that. But then I stopped and I thought about it, and I was like, okay, why don't I want to do this? Like, is this just not the thing for me, or am I scared of this? And, I thought about it and I was like, this is just not my thing. Like, it's not like I'm afraid this is going to damage my reputation, although it might have. It just wasn't something that I would naturally do. Like, I'm sure those webinars were hilarious. I'm sure they were fun for the people that chose to say yes to them. But it was a no for me. But I took the time to stop and evaluate that. And I remember I was working with Lisa Wechtenheiser at the time, my business coach mentor that I work with on and off, and I've mentioned a lot of times, and I'll link to her in the show notes. But I remember asking her about that, and she agreed that it was probably not a yes for me, that it was not a natural thing, because, again, I don't go out and party, I don't get drunk. Like, it was just not me. And so, I wrote back and I said, thank you very much. I don't think it's a good fit for me, but, thanks so much for thinking of me and thanks for the invitation. And that was that. And I felt fine about that. I really have not regretted saying no to that opportunity. So the no wasn't necessarily clear and obvious. I mean, it was, but I think my head was kind of going back and forth on that. So I think it's important to examine your reasons why you might be afraid of this opportunity. Are you afraid of it, or is it just something that's not a good fit for you? And if it's not a good fit for you, that's okay. Like, you could force yourself to say yes for it, and maybe you'd learn something from that experience, or maybe not. I don't know. You might want to say yes even if it's not a good fit, but probably not. But if you're afraid of the opportunity, I think it's important to realize that if someone else gave you this opportunity and offered it to you, they believe in you. So even if you don't believe in yourself because you have low confidence, low self-esteem, these people who gave this opportunity believe in you. So ITV's, called me on a couple times. This time that they called me back on, they thought I was a good fit. So who am I to say, no, I'm not a good fit for your thing? I mean, it was about talking to a tree, so they probably don't have a lot of tree whisperer people to talk to a tree on television. So they believed in me. And for me, to be honest, my fear about saying yes to this opportunity was not so much, can I do it? I mean, there was some of that, but it was mostly, can I do this last minute trip? So again, if someone else gave you this opportunity, they believe in you, so maybe you should give yourself the benefit of the doubt and believe in yourself, or at least acknowledge that maybe this is something you can do. And also remember that many opportunities are a one-shot deal. They won't come up again. So if I had said no that first time that I was invited on to this morning, they wouldn't have said yes again. They would have just forgotten about me and they would have moved on to other things, and that would have been that. And maybe if I had hired my publicist again to, do another publicity run for my book, then maybe I would have come up into their awareness again, but I said no the first time. So why would they approach me? So many opportunities are one-shot deal. Make sure that if you say no, it's a clear no and you're happy with that door being closed, possibly forever. So why say yes? Talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but I think that saying yes to spontaneous, unexpected opportunities opens us up to new opportunities, new adventures, new challenges, new experiences, breaks up a familiar routine. I'm actually going to be walking the Camino de Santiago, the Portuguese one, in a couple of weeks. So these 2 weeks are pretty busy. I've got my time very carefully mapped out in Google Calendar. I don't have a lot of spare time. So I'm very particular about how I'm spending my time in these 2 weeks. And yet I knew this was an important experience. It was worth breaking up my routine for. It was worth investing the time in. But if you're in a normal routine, you don't have anything urgent coming up, saying yes to a spontaneous opportunity can break up that routine and teach you something new. So how can you help yourself to say yes, to learn how to say yes, to practice saying yes to unexpected, spontaneous opportunities? First of all, ask yourself if you can do it. Does it physically fit into your calendar, even if you need to cancel or rearrange things? So for me, I looked at my calendar. I knew I had a call the next day. I could rearrange that. I could rearrange all the other things, I could drag and drop to Thursday and Friday and make everything fit in somehow. And I did. So if you can do it, obviously if you have something urgent that can't be changed or rearranged, that's a whole other situation. But if it can fit into your calendar, then that's the first thing. If you can't do it, you can't do it, and that's an easy no. If you can do it, then ask yourself what you're afraid of. What is getting in the way of you saying yes? What's blocking you? And last weekend, I was on a workcation finishing up my Business Blocks book. And I just launched my Business Beliefs book, my second edition, last Friday. So business beliefs, business blocks, and life beliefs and life blocks are really on my mind lately because I've been redoing those books to release the second edition. So mindset stuff is very important to look at. So what's blocking you? What's getting in the way of you saying yes to this opportunity? Is it low self-esteem, low self-confidence? Are you afraid you're not good enough? Are you afraid you can't do it? What is going on for you? And write that stuff down, journal it, get it out of your head and onto paper, because a lot of times when we try to sweep stuff under the rug, or we just leave it in our head and our mind gremlins are like going over and over about it, that's when it like blows up into this big thing that's bigger than it actually is. But when you pull this stuff out of your head, get it onto paper where you can see it, oftentimes you realize it's not that big a deal. It's not that scary. It's not that bad. So, and of course, do the mindset work. If you know how to work with your mindset, do the mindset work to release those fears, blocks, and limiting beliefs. If you can see a professional to help you with this, do that. But clear that mindset stuff so that you can more easily say yes to these opportunities. As I'm saying that, I'm reminded of that very first opportunity when I went into London to go on This Morning. I loved that opportunity so much that when I was on the train coming back home, I spent the whole time balancing beliefs and working through belief statements to open myself up to say yes to more opportunities like that in the future. So this stuff's really powerful. I always talk about this. It's really important. Work on your mindset. And I think it's important for me to note that you shouldn't be saying yes to everything, but you probably could say yes to more things than you are currently saying yes to. Obviously, everyone's busy. We have limited time, but think about what opportunities you can say yes to. And I wanted to clarify that when I put together the notes for this podcast, I was thinking about saying yes to new opportunities, new things, not necessarily routine social events that maybe you've been saying no to, but it could be about anything that you're hesitating to say yes to. So I would suggest that you go back over, run your mind through the last few months or the last year, and think about all the things that you said no to, all the opportunities that you were given and you said, no, I'm not going to do this. And go back through that and think, are you glad you said no to those opportunities? Was it the best response? Are you happy you said no, or do you regret it? would you say yes if you went back and were given those opportunities again? And then think about why you said no to them. Was it really a bad fit, or were you just afraid? Did your mind crap get in the way? Did your fears, did your blocks, did your limiting beliefs get in the way of you saying yes to those opportunities? Write this down. Write it down in your journal or wherever, and just pull that crap out of your head and get it where you can see it. And then consider doing the mindset work to release that stuff so it doesn't get in the way of you saying yes to future opportunities. I'm always reminded of this opportunity that I was given, it was about 11 or 12 years ago. Before I got into Toastmasters and public speaking, I was contacted, this was back when I was living in Argentina, to speak to it was some American university MBA program had a trip to Latin America, and they wanted to speak to entrepreneurs about entrepreneurship in Latin America. And so they invited me to be a speaker, and I said yes. Like spontaneously in the moment on the call, I was like, yes, of course. And then as soon as I hung up the phone, I was like, no, why did I say yes to that? And I actually thought about calling the guy up and saying no. And I was just going back and forth, and I was like, I can't do this. I don't know how to speak. I don't know. I'm terrified. And this was before I knew about doing mindset work. This was before I knew about any of this stuff. But I stayed strong, and I didn't call him up and say no. I did it. And then I was invited back by the same organization to speak to a different university, and it was a great opportunity. Both opportunities were fantastic. I was so glad I said yes, but I was so scared. But I said yes. So I'm really, really glad that before I was even aware of how to work with my mindset, I said yes to those things. And I think that really got me on my track to public speaking. But I almost said no to that. So go back to your past, even if it's like 10 or 12 years in the past, and think about things that you've said no to. Was it a good thing to say no to? If not, what could you do differently? What fears, blocks, limiting beliefs were getting in the way so that you could work on them and clear that stuff so that you can more easily say yes to opportunities like that in the future. And then from now and into the future, get clear on what you need to believe about yourself to say yes to these things. And be aware. Like, a lot of times opportunities aren't that clear. A lot of times opportunities aren't people phoning you up and saying, hey, can you come on TV in Liverpool tomorrow? Sometimes they're really subtle. Sometimes there's someone saying, oh, I really think you need to know this person. And this is a great example. Someone said this to me a couple weeks ago. Oh, I really feel like you need to know this person that I know. And I checked the guy out, and he was really interesting. And I was like, oh, but I'm so busy. I've got stuff that I'm doing. I don't have time for this right now. But you know what? There's a reason she thought I needed to know this guy. So I need to get back in touch with her and say, yes, I would love for you to introduce me. So it's subtle stuff like that. And you might be tempted to say no just because you're busy, not because it doesn't feel right or it doesn't feel wrong or you're afraid. Like, that's a very good example of something that, it's an opportunity, and I don't know where it's going to come from it, but it's a subtle opportunity. It's someone says, I think you should know someone. Or it's you feeling like you need to connect to people. Or it's, I don't know, something that someone says and it kind of sparked an idea in your mind, and maybe you could roll with that idea or not. So for example, I'm putting together a series of really short books called Into the Woods Short Reads. And I'm doing that because last week, or the week before actually, when I was researching categories for my business mindset books on Amazon, I came across these two categories called Kindle Short Reads. There's Kindle Short Reads 30 minutes and Kindle Short Reads 60 minutes. And the second I saw that, I was like, okay, that's not relevant for this book, but oh my God, I have all these podcast episodes that are a half an hour long. It would be perfect for me to take the transcripts from these podcast episodes and turn them into ebooks. And I did that. I started the first one. I finished the first one. I'm working on the second one now. There's so much editing that goes into these. It's not just an issue of taking the transcript and turning it into an ebook. The first one took me about 5 hours, which actually is not that long, but it requires a lot of work because the way I speak is not necessarily the way you want to read. So it takes work, but I'm super excited about this project. However, it was an opportunity that came to me by this weird idea that was just popped into my head. And logically, I have so many books on the table right now. As I've said, I'm re-releasing all my 4 business mindset books. I'm releasing a second edition of my South Downs Way book. That's actually almost done. It should be out in a couple of months. And I have other stuff that I'm working on. I have so many book projects for this year, and I'm not good at handling multiple projects. So saying yes to these Into the Woods short reads books was not a logical yes. I don't have a ton of extra time, but it just felt right. And so I rolled with it. So pay attention, just be aware of new opportunities, spontaneous opportunities coming your way in whatever form. Because again, they're not always as obvious as someone calling you on the phone and saying, hey, can you do this thing? Pay attention to the ideas that pop into your head. Pay attention to the things that people tell you. And pay attention to the phone calls that you get, explicitly inviting you to do something. And please let me know. I would love to hear from you. So drop me a line. Let me know what you thought of this week's episode, but also I would love to hear from you and hear about what opportunities you've said yes to in the past that were great opportunities and you're really glad that you did. Maybe write to me and tell me about opportunities that you've said no to in the past that you were glad that you did or that you regretted. And let me know about opportunities that have come into your life that you've either said yes to or no to and what you've learned from that, because these are all learning opportunities. These are all opportunities to get to know ourselves better so that we can make better decisions for ourselves in the future. So thank you for listening. You can email me at holly@hollyworton.com or find me online and get in touch there. I would also love for you to join me on Patreon. Thank you so much to Jester for signing up to be a new patron. I really, really, really appreciate that. If you head to patreon.com/hollyworton, you can join me there. Membership starts at just $1 a month and you get exclusive access to stuff I don't share anywhere else. So that's patreon.com, patreon.com/hollyworton. Thank you so much for listening. And remember to visit hollyworton.com/345 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollyworton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.